Hi, my name is Estelle Simons and I am a teacher in the fashion department of Boxiall Institute. Today in this lesson we are making a pair of shorts, and these shorts are these ones here, and just going through the details of what we're going to make is we're going to have a fly, we're going to have pockets that continue into the fly area, and we also are going to have a curved waistband as well with a double rolled hem at the base here. So just giving you a bit of a view on the inside of what that looks like. So you can see how those pockets continue on into the center front here. The back looks like this. The back is quite plain in compared to the front. You'll also notice that on the inside here, we don't have any overlocking on the waistband. So we haven't done a ditch stitch method on this one. We've done a top stitching method. So I'm going to turn that back again. So we have top stitching around the outside, so concealing all those raw edges inside. We also, with the fly that we're doing today, it's going to be a unisex fly, which is when you're wearing it yourself, the way you know is that for a unisex, it will be your left over your right. If it's a female version, it'll be your right over the left. And inside the fly area, which we'll show you in more detail in the next few steps, you have what we call the shield here, and we also have the fly part. And you'll also notice the waistband extends into the shield when you're developing those patterns to create this garment. So now that we know a little bit about the garment, we will get started with working on the pockets first. So these are the cutout pieces that you will need to make your shorts with. The main pieces that you'll have are the front leg, which will have a shorter extension and the cutout for the pocket. The back will have a longer extension. Then you'll have your pocket pieces. So these pocket pieces will be made up of two pieces. This will be the pocket facing, which will line the edge of the pocket on the main pant, and then you have the backing that goes behind. So these, when they're finished, will look something like that. Then you have the pieces that you need for the fly. These are made up of obviously a zip. Then you have what we call the fly itself, and this one here is referred to as the shield. Then for the waistband, you'll have your back and front pieces, and you'll also have facing pieces. So here you have what will be the back piece, and this will be the facing for the back piece. And then for the front, you'll have, again, a facing and the outer piece, which will create the front part of your waistband. And you'll have a left and a right side. The left and the right side are different lengths, and that's to do with the extension that is needed on one side. First thing to do on your shorts is to attach the pocket. With the pocket, we're going to be attaching it across this diagonal line, though it's best to attach the pocket facing itself to this piece here, which is called the pocket bearer. And when we do that, we need to make sure we have a left and a right first. And I'm going to basically attach my pocket facing to the bearer. Before I attach it though, I'm going to overlock along this edge once I've overlocked along this edge, I'm going to make sure that the edges are matching where the notches are on my actual bearer here. So you can see there's a little notch just here. There's a little notch just down here. So making sure that edge is all lining up. Once it's lining up, and we've pre-overlocked this edge, we're going to stitch it 1 centimetre down and around. Make sure you have a left and a right. I've just overlocked the edge of the pocket facing. You can see I've got the correct side of the overlocking showing up this way, and underneath has the wrong side of the overlocking. Once you've overlocked this edge, you're going to line up this facing piece on top of your pocket bearer. And when you line it up, make sure you line up the outer edge, line it up with the notches that are indicated on the piece underneath. And then you're going to stitch this piece in place at 1 centimetre going down and around the corner. So it's just from this edge to this edge that you're going to do it. So I've done this previously on this piece over here on the opposite side, and I've stitched at the 1 centimetre going down around the corner. When you've attached these two pieces together, you can then overlock them together, but make sure the overlocking is done on the outside area where you can't see the inner area, because this is the bit you'll see inside the garment when you turn it inside out. When this is all overlocked and attached together, you're then ready to join it to your front leg. In preparation to join the two diagonal areas together, you're going to need to pre-fuse a piece of fusing down the edge here just to stop the pocket edge from stretching. And the way that I attach these two together is I'll put the two good sides together, and to do that it's confusing for some people. So normally what I do is I put the wrong sides together and then I will flip them so the good sides are together. Like this, and then I'll put a few pins in there just to double check before I stitch it. So I'll just lay it back out as if I had stitched it. And that's looking like what I want the end result to be. So I'm ready now to stitch it together. So what I'm going to do is stitch it at my designated amount by the notch, which is 1 centimetre. And I'm going to stitch from one end to the other end, then open it up and do an understitch from one edge to the other edge. Understitch is just 2 mil away from the join and has the seam allowance underneath. I've just stitched the pocket facing and the main part of the front leg together. I've also understitched it as previously talked about, so that helps it roll over when you go and press it. Once you have attached the pocket to the actual front leg, you're then going to stay stitch around the bottom edge here and across the top and down around the edge here. And I also now stay stitched it around the edge. So the stay stitch is 6 mil or a foot width away from the edge there, just to hold all the layers together. So when you're attaching it to the fly or to the back piece, it doesn't move. So now we've got our actual pocket where we can put our hand into it. It looks like this on the back. And now we're ready to attach the fly pieces to the left and the right. So here we have our fly pieces that we saw previously. We have the shield and we have the fly. We'll need to do some pre-prep before we attach them to this area. Firstly, with the fly, we're going to overlock around this edge. Then with this piece, we're going to put the good sides together and stitch across the bottom here and then bag it out. We'll also need to pre-overlock the inside edge. So now we've overlocked the inner center front of the pants, and we've overlocked the fly on the curve, and we have now stitched the shield like this and then bagged it out. And pressed it in half. We're now going to overlock this edge and then attach the zip itself to the edge there. You'll need to attach the zip so you have 1.5 centimeters at the top there before you get to the actual stopper at the top there. And you'll just be stitching in the middle of the tape with the edge of the tape sitting next to the edge of the overlocking that we'll do on this edge. When we've attached that, we'll be able to attach it to here first, but I'll go and put these pieces together, and then we'll start attaching both of these to the actual main pants. So the shield has been prepared now with the zip on top, and in preparation for that to join onto this edge here. And this is our fly, which will join onto this edge. So they will look something like that. Will go behind underneath there when it's finished, and this will sit on top like this. So you'll end up seeing your zip with the shield, and then the fly will attach to this inner edge. But before we attach these, we actually need to attach a part of the crotch area here together before we can attach the actual fly and shield together. So you'll notice on your fabric before you overlocked it, you have a little notch here, and if you look carefully, you'll still be able to see the little cut in the fabric there. So what we need to do is basically put our good sides of our fronts together, find that little notch that we have here, and we're basically going to stitch at 1 centimeter. And as we get closer to where that notch is just here, we're going to come a little bit away from the 1 centimeter and end up at 1.5 centimeters away. So 1.5 centimeters where the notch is, blending back down to 1 centimeter. So I'll stitch that together so we can attach these two pieces to the fronts. So we have just attached the two fronts together, starting at 1 centimeter down in the leg and then finishing at 1.5 where the notch is. Then we can attach the fly and the shield now to the front, and we're going to basically line up the front fly depending on whether you're doing a unisex or female version. This is a unisex version, and we have the two edges together. We're going to attach the fly on the center front, and we're going to stitch at 1 centimeter, and we'll stop stitching where the junction of the two fronts meet. So as you can't see this on this side, the best thing to do is to flip it over, stitch it from this side. So you're going to stitch at 1 centimeter and stitch all the way down until you stop just where this junction is that you can see underneath here. So I've now just stitched the fly and the front together down to the point where they're not touching, because one's at 1 centimeter and one's at 1.5, but they're at the same spot where they stop. And then when you've done that, you will, to finish this one off, you'll need to do that same understitching we did on the pocket. So you'll need to do that 2 mil stitch down here, which I will do later. And what we can do though first is attach the actual shield on to the other side now. And we'll do it in a similar process, except for this time we're going to do it so it's got top stitching. So we're going to fold our seam allowance on the left side here to 1 centimeter and place it on top so it sits in the middle of the tape, just covering our previous stitching. And so we want to do a recessed zip. So when we're folding this into place, we're folding the whole thing at 1 centimeter, and we'll do an edge stitch along this edge here. So it means that when you joined your two fronts together, you stitched them at 1.5. So that means when you fold this, you should be stitching inside the seam allowance area. We've now joined the fly and the shield to the pants. So you can see here it's been edge stitched and it goes internally inside the seam in this detail here. And I also have now on the other side where the fly is, I have understitched it as well. So that will help it roll over nicely. So the next step will be to attach the actual fly to the actual main area. So that typical stitching that you see on your pants. So we'll be doing that stitch next. So to prep for that, fold your fly so it's sitting flat, pin it into position, just make sure it doesn't move. Then with your notch that you have at the top here, line up the top folded edge with that position so it should just overlap this area a little bit. And once you've got that into position, you can either hold it and flip it open to prep the bit underneath, or you can do it in a 2-pin stage. I'm going to show you a 2-pin stage. So I'm just going to pin this front edge down so that doesn't move, and then open up so I can see underneath. And what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to pin, this is the fly here, and I want to pin the fly and the zip together. So I'm just going to put a couple pins in there and hold those two layers together. So you can see I've pinned the white white zip to the actual fly just there. So it doesn't have the shield in it. And if you want to double check, just come back to the front, undo this pin here, pull this back and unzip it just to check that you've got the correct pieces together. So you can see they're together, zip it back up, just check that it's sitting all nice and flat, sitting where you want it to sit. Then once you're happy with everything, you're going to then actually stitch in the middle of the zip and attach it to the actual fly itself. So you're just going to stitch down all the way down from one end to the other. I have now attached the zip to the actual fly, and we're ready to actually do that final detailed stitching that you normally see on your pants. So again, just zip up your zip and just pin the fly and the main outer together. To double check, again, just unzip it just to make sure that you haven't caught your shield in there, because if you catch your shield in there, you won't be able to open up the pants. So you can see I haven't caught this blue shield in there. I'm happy with how that's sitting. It's sitting nice and flat. So what you need to do is you need to stitch down and around. You need to make sure you're stitching inside that overlocking edge there. So you can mark it out with a piece of chalk. You might make a template even, or get a ruler and mark whatever distance you have here allowed for in your pattern. So in this particular one here, we've allowed for it to be stitched at about 3.5 centimeters. So I'm just going to draw that in place. I would draw it just to make it easier so you get a nice shape. This is a friction pen I'm using, so it will iron out when I finish. And depending on the shape you want the bottom, the classic is a round corner. So I'm just going to draw that in place. So I've got a bit of a guide to follow. When you're stitching this, just back tack at the top, stitch around the corner here. When you stitch around the corner, you're going to back tack here, but you need to make sure that you're not stitching the fly itself. So you need to move that out of the way. Once you have done your top stitching on the top here, which could be 2 rows of stitching depending on your design, you're then going to do the final part of the fly, which is attaching the actual fly component, which is this purple one, with the shield itself. So what we normally do is two ways to do it. One is to do a little bar tack on the front here through all the layers, or you can, if you don't want it as obvious on the front, you can go onto the inside here and do a little stitch across this corner here. So it's about 3 stitches forward, 3 back and 3 forward. And that will hold them together. So when you open up your pants, that the shield doesn't fold backwards like that. So it stays in place and stays attached at the bottom corner there. Now that we've finished completing the fly and the pockets, we're going to attach the back pieces to the front. Before we attach them, we just need to complete the darts that you can see here. So you need to stitch those darts up. When we stitch those darts up, we will then need to just put the good sides together. So make sure you've got a left and a right. And you're going to stitch around the crotch and you're going to overlock it. You can overlock it closed or open depending on what you're doing. And once you've got that prepped, you'll be then ready to be able to put this on top of here and stitch down your sides. So I'm going to prep all that up and come back with it complete. So we now have attached the centre back of the actual back piece, and I've overlocked mine close. So iron it with the good side of your overlocking facing up. I've also stitched my darts on the left and the right, and I've also attached the back to the front. So stitching those 2 side edges together. I've overlocked it so the good side of the overlocking is on the front side where the pocket is, and I've ironed it towards the back. You normally end up doing that because the front pocket is quite thick and it naturally wants to go towards the back. So that one's been overlocked and pressed. So next we need to then do the bit that goes between the legs, so the inner seam. And we will just literally just match up those 2 edges. So it doesn't matter if it's a pair of pants or a pair of shorts. You're just going to start at the bottom wherever the hem is and stitch from one edge to the other edge. We just want to make sure that our connecting junction is lining up. So just put a pin in there just to assist with that. If you happen to have open seam allowance, then make sure it's open. If you have it closed, then push it off to the correct way. And we're basically going to then stitch at 1 centimetre and overlock it closed. So this is what the inner leg looks like when it's been overlocked, it's stitched together. What I did forget to mention before is when I did overlock this side, you'll notice I haven't overlocked all the way down to the bottom edge here. I stopped overlocking at the notch here, and that's so when we do fold this back on itself, it just eliminates some of the bulk. So if you can remember, try and stop where the fold notch is going to be for when we do the hem. Before we do the hem though, we are going to attach the waistband at the top here. So we'll grab that out and prep that up. So I'll just start with just laying out the facing piece, which is going to be in the pink. And what we're looking for is notches that are on the side that help match it back together again. So you should have something that might indicate where you're going to join it. So this one's got a little notch just here, which this one also has the connecting little notch just there to show me those 2 belong together. That way you can't accidentally join it to this way because you can see you've got the wrong side matching. Also, another tip is with the front, you've got your straight grain at the center front. So look to see where your straight grain is. Then you'll realize that is the front, and your side grain has more diagonal grains going through it. Now that we've identified which is the side pieces, we can line them up with each other. And we're basically going to just stitch each side at 1 centimetre and press them open. And we'll also do that for our other piece, which will be the external one that we will see, which will be here, like that, and like that. Once you have the curved waistband joined together at the two seams, you can now join the outer piece and the inner lining piece together. So you'll just put the right sides together, lining up your seams. Just put a pin again just to anchor them together. Then what you're going to do is stitch the top inner curve. So just back tack at one edge at 1 centimetre, stitch around, and then once you've done that, you're going to then open it up and do a edge stitch, which will be on the pink part of the garment. Once we have stitched the outer waistband to the inner layer of waistband and understitched it, we're now ready to attach it to the shorts. So start with attaching main points together, and we're going to pin it so it's going to be the lining pinned to the wrong side of the shorts. So I'm starting pin with the side seam first. I'm going to pin where the centre back is. You should have a little notch there to show you where your centre back is. And they're going to line up the other side. This side should have, if it's lining up properly, this side should have an extension allowing for our fly shield, and allow for it to have 1 centimetre overhanging on the edge there. Pin also the other front together. Once you've got your main anchor points in, so you've got the front, side, centre back, side, and the shield pinned together, then come back and put a few pins in between just to hold it together. So normally what I do is I'll sit it down flat and then find the halfway point and put a pin in the middle. And if I feel I need extra pins, then I'll put a pin in between those two pins. So I'll keep doing that all the way around. Once you have the waistband attached all the way around, you're then going to stitch from the centre front all the way around to the shield area. When you're doing it, if you can, it's a really great idea just to be able to stitch so you just go over the edge and come back again, because that gives you a little marker that you can use to guide you to finish off the waistband. And the same on this end, if you can just stitch so it just goes over the edge of the shield and goes back, that'll give you some information on the back to be able to help you turn the piece around. The waistband has now been attached to the shorts, and as you can see, it's the good side of the waistband that's been attached to the inside part of the short. And you'll notice, as I talked about before, with the ends here, I've stitched, so I've just gone over the edge of where the actual short is and left 1 centimetre at the ends with the actual waistband itself. Now we can finish off the actual corners. Before we finish off the corners, these edges to here, just press up the actual waistband so it sits away and doesn't have any little tucks or anything away from the actual shorts themselves. And once you've done that, then you're ready to actually conceal this edge. So to conceal this edge, we're going to roll the good side, so the calico side, around the actual pink part of the waistband. And we're going to do it so we fold up the inside edge just here, and we're going to back tack and stitch straight down. The waistband is now stitched together, folded in half. So you can see how I've stitched at 1 centimetre, just missing the folded edge of the actual pants themselves. The same on this side, you can see I've got the stitching coming straight down. You can now turn this inside out. And this is what the inside looks like, and the outside looks like this. So we haven't finished doing the last bit of stitching, but we're going to do a top edge stitch all the way around. And the reason why we're finishing it on the outside last is to give a really controlled, neat look. So we'll be basically tucking this in 1 centimetre and then coming around and edge stitching all the way around. Before we do that though, we just want to neaten up this corner. 2 things we want to do. We want to remove some of the excess seam allowance. So the seam allowance that's within the seam allowance. So we're going to cut a chunk of that out like that. And then turn that through. If you're finding the corner isn't coming through, grab your screwdriver and just help push it out. So that corner really helps give a nice sharp corner. And once you've got that, before we actually do this final fold here ready for sewing, we're going to actually just press that top edge so that sits nice and flat, and then we'll come back and we'll pin this bottom edge ready for stitching. The top has now been pressed down, so we're ready now to fold in this bottom edge and then top stitch all the way around. So we'll start prepping that. Again, like when we originally attached the waistband, start with folding in your main areas, so e.g. the side seam, the centre back, and then work backwards with the pins. When I'm doing this, I'm holding it and I'm stretching out my waistband, and I'm then folding my seam allowance so it just covers my pink stitching that I've done before. So once I've got it folded and it's just covering my stitching that's underneath there, and I can feel with my hands underneath that it's all sitting flat, I then weave a pin in to hold it in place. And then I'm going to do the same to the centre back. You should have a notch here, so to help you line it up, do the same thing. Move to the side. And then I'll work my way in between those areas. So I've got my centre front and my side seam here. So I'll go halfway and fold that in. And then put ones in between those spots. And if you feel you need another one in between again, go and put one in between. I also will generally just give a bit of a finger press just to see if it looks nice and even through there. You may even want to go with the tape and just double check that the width is fairly even all the way around, but I'll continue pinning this up before I stitch it. So once you've pinned that up all the way around, I just have this side to finish, but once I'm happy with that, like I said before, just come back and just double check that it looks fairly even. So I'd come back and just do a bit of a check wherever you can see that it looks definitely a little bit out, just do a little bit of a tweak. And once you're happy with everything, then you're ready to basically do an edge stitch across the bottom edge first. And when you get to the other end, so you go all the way around, and when you get to here, then turn and then come back the other way. So you're giving that sort of jean look where you've got top stitching all the way around the edge there. The waistband now has been edge stitched all the way around. And once you've done that, give it a really good press and you'll be able to do your buttonhole and attach your button underneath here. But before we do that, you're going to do the hem. With the hem, have a look on the inside for information on how much the hem allowance is. Here you can see there's a little notch just here. So that's indicating the amount of hem allowance that's been allowed on the pattern, and that's 4 centimeters. There's also a secondary notch that's just here at 1 centimeter. So that's indicating that it's going to be a double folded hem. So it'll fold up at 4 centimeters on the inside, and then it'll fold in another centimeter so you don't have any overlocking showing at all. In preparation for that, just to make the process easier, I have used my friction pen and just put marks at 4 centimeters all the way along here. So you can see I've just marked 4 centimeters, 4, 4, and I've done that around all the way down around both legs. You can do it with pins, but the friction pen is a great tool, alternative. And basically I'm now going to just put pins in here and fold it all the way around where I've marked it with the friction pen. Put your pins so they're outwards. So it's easier to press it. Depending on your fabric, it might be pinning about 5 to 10 centimeters apart. So what I'm going to do now is just give that a really nice press, and then I'm going to press that in 1 centimeter after I've pressed the outside, and then I'm ready to do a top stitch on this inside edge here. So we get a nice 3 centimeter top stitch that shows on the outside here. The hem is now finished, so it's been double rolled, so you can see on the inside here that it's got the edge stitching. And make sure, even if the inside is folded just a little uneven, make sure that you continuously make sure it's the same distance away from the folded edge here. So when you turn it to the correct side, it looks even going all the way around the leg. The inside of the pants or the shorts should look like this. And you've got that pocket, as we were talking about at the very beginning, extending in underneath the fly. And the last thing to do is the buttons and the buttonhole. And that's optional, that depends if that's part of your design. You could have a hook and eye behind here as well. In preparation for putting the button in place, you'll need to know how big your button is. So if your button is 2 centimeters, then you need to mark between the waistband height halfway and measure back 2 centimeters. So I'm going to mark the 2 centimeters because my button is 2 centimeters, and I'm just going to make sure that spot is sitting halfway between the top and the bottom. It's a little out, so I'm just going to readjust that. Yep. Okay, once you've got that in place, you then need to measure backwards 2 centimeters because that's how big your actual button is. It's going to be back to here. And from that position, you're going to mark 3 mil forward. So this is where we will put our buttonhole, and your button that you attach will be at this center point that we originally marked. And the best way to move that information across to underneath is to make sure everything is lined up with your pants, put your pin there, and then wherever it lands underneath, put your dot, and that's where you'll stitch your button on. Once you have done the buttonhole, you can now put the button on. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So we already marked out the positioning previously. If you want to double check it, you can just put it back on top and actually put a mark through the actual hole of the top of the button there, and make sure it's a little out. So I've decided I'm going to just change that positioning a little bit. And then open up the pants, get your button and get some thread ready on a needle. Double the thread over. You don't need to tie a knot at the end. I'm going to show you a trick where you don't need to do that. So basically just make sure they're double and stitch 3 stitches on the spot. And that will be stronger than tying a knot in the end. So that's now anchored and it's not going to come away. Then you need to decide on how you want to attach your button. You can do really cool patterns. You can do a square, a cross, or just 2 parallel lines. So you can make it into a cool pattern if you wish to. I'm just going to do a classic cross. And at this stage, you'll go all the way through to the other side. And you just need to do this 3 times on one direction. So I've just done that 3 times across there. So now I'm just going to move over to the other diagonal. Once you've gone through the 3rd time, come up in between the outer and the button, so close to where you've been stitching. And what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it around 3 times, and that helps create a bit of what we call a shank. It just helps hold those threads tighter together. And then once you've wrapped it around 3 times really tight, then do 3 tiny little stitches just like you did at the start, and that will be like a back tack and just anchor it in place. And then you can trim it and you have a button that will not come off. So now you've got a button. And now you have a finished pair of shorts or pants. The shorts are now finished, so just going back through what we've done, we had made these pockets that continue on into the fly, and we've also done a fly. This particular fly is called a unisex fly because it is the left over the right. If it was a female version, it'll be right over the left. And we have a curved waistband on here, and we also have the double rolled hem at the bottom. So the techniques I've shown you in these shorts are not the only techniques you can do to make a pair of pants or shorts, but they will give you a head start in understanding the basics of how to put a fly in the pockets and the waistband on. But there are many other variations that I'm sure that you will explore.